Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Finance Beyond Borders Lunch and Learn webinar. My name is Lorna Bladen. I'm the CMO here at Enterprise Nation, and I'm very happy to welcome you here today. For those of you who are joining a Lunch and Learn for the very first time, Enterprise Nation is a vibrant community of startups and small business owners that exist to shortcut your route to trusted business support. Today's session is part of Finance Beyond Borders. We've partnered with the amazing team at Airwallex to bring a free learning series to ambitious founders who want to cut international costs, simplify money management, and to empower small businesses to operate globally with ease. We'll put in the chat the link to the Finance Beyond Borders Hub. Please do check it out. I am really pleased to introduce you today to our guest speaker, Tannah Matus, CFO at Secret Food Tours. Tannah will be sharing how he's built finance systems that scale and support global operations, helping you to understand how to build a finance stack that grows with your business as you expand into new markets. We really want to make sure that today's webinar is interactive and as valuable as possible. Please do use the chat function, use the Q&A, and we'll do our very best to answer some of your questions towards the end. But please, to start with, and I love that Claudia's gone straight in there with the big hello, I would love everyone else to say hi, who you are, what do you do, where are you dialing in from? I'm from Amsterdam today. And yeah, we really want to make sure today is valuable and engaging for you all. And it is recorded as well, so you'll get a follow-up email later today. So, intro, Tannah, I just did a very, very quick one, but I'd love to hear from you who you are, what do you do?
Yeah, so thanks, Lorna. I'm Tannah. I'm the CFO of Secret Food Tours. We are a global food tour operator headquartered in London, but we operate in 5 cities at the moment and growing across the world, 28 countries, 5 continents. You know, we are truly a global business. And with that comes every pain point you can imagine on being a global company. Obviously, the upside of being able to expand internationally, but you know all the issues that we're going to dive into today. I typically work for founder-led, high-growth SME businesses, and have done so the vast majority of my career, taking companies from a sort of founder-led hub and spoke to a truly global, highly efficient in operation and a growing business that can scale. And I've done that multiple times. So yeah, excited to be here.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I love that Michelle's dialing in from Australia. It always makes me feel good as the CMO of Enterprise Nation when we go international. So yeah, big welcome to you all. So, Tannah, first off, can you explain what scaling means in the context of financial systems for those that maybe are a little unsure?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's moving away from that founder-managed spreadsheet world into something that you can repeat, automate, audit, and no matter how you scale, it doesn't break. Systems that support multi-currency, multi-entity, multi-tax, but that you don't have to layer in costs or headcount. So for me, it's the outcome is how I can really get super clean and fast data out of a system. It's not just a finance system that decision makers can make decisions daily or weekly rather than quarterly at the end of a board meeting.
Thank you. That's super clear. I love that. And what were the first signs for you that your organization kind of needed sort of financial systems to sort of help elevate sort of the growth of the business?
Yeah, for me, it's all around data. So if people ask me a question, I'm a custodian of information around the organization, financial or otherwise, and I can't give that information to them. I know something's not working. So for me, I want to be able to either answer a question or provide a report or give insight for decision makers up or down that decision-making tree that, you know, can trust that information and can make rapid decisions so that we can continue our scaling. So for me, it's really important that I can provide that information. If I can't do that, I know something needs to be looked at.
Thank you. So again, I'm the CMO of Enterprise Nation. I'm very comfortable with what a sort of marketing stack is. But for those that maybe don't know what a sort of stack is, or specifically a finance stack, could you explain kind of what it is and how did you approach building one that could support you when taking the business international?
Yeah, I look at it, and by the way, I'm no expert in this. I've failed many times in trying to create this, and it is a learning experience on a daily basis through all of this world. So it's continually trying to improve it. But the way that I look at it is I look at it in two worlds. I look at it financial operations, and that's sort of trying to connect finance to the rest of the business. And then I look at it that strict audit and accountancy world. So I have those two pillars. Now, financial operations does blend its way into audit and accountancy because that's where the numbers come from. But I build typically on those two pillars. And then internationally, for us, we have to think about legal issues, permanent establishment risk, tax implications. I mean, simple stuff like, can you draw money in Peru from a certain type of bank card? I mean, it's like banking internationally for us is such a major problem. And, you know, whenever we look at a territory, we have to figure out how money moves in that jurisdiction, basically.
I see. Yeah, that really clarifies things. Thank you. It does feel like such a minefield. Were there any sort of specific tools or platforms that you leveraged that made a real sort of significant difference in helping you manage these cross-border finances?
Yeah, I've looked at a lot. So this is a shameless plug because we've gone on a real journey with Airwallex. To be honest, we started with them. So our main issue, we've got about 500 freelancers across the world that I need to basically pay within 3 days of them submitting an invoice in 23 currencies. And I want that payment to be automated. Once the invoice is approved, I basically want to click a button and the money gets sent out. So we had a load of issues around accounts payable. We were sort of paying 5 to 10 days after the end of the month, and people were getting annoyed because they were doing tours and it was 45 days since the tour and they hadn't received their money. It just like really degrades trust in the brand. And Airwallex pretty much solved that overnight for me. And so we adopted Airwallex's accounts payable module. And then that really went well. So we started to then have a look at what else Airwallex could do. And, you know, we compared that to multiple product providers in the industry. Like I don't just look at one. Our next big bastion was global company cards. We have, I think, 700 or 800 company cards in circulation. Each tour guide has a card. They use that to buy food and drink on the tours. And I needed something that I could fully integrate into our own proprietary tech that was auditable, traceable, automated. And Airwallex basically opened the doors to what's effectively free development into their API that we can create and build around our own tech stack. And not many providers out there were offering that. So we built our global payment, sort of card payment solution with them. The thing that I like about Airwallex, and you know, I'll say this openly, like we haven't been able to nail everything. Yeah, their receipt OCR, their OCR technology, which is how you receive a receipt, is not what we need as a business. It's not at the level that we need it at. But if I describe a problem to them, you know, they will go away and be like, in 6 months' time, we'll have this fixed for you. And that's exactly what they're doing right now. I mean, we're pretty much nearly at a point where we can take over. We process about 2,000 credit card receipts a day in 20 something languages. So it's a hugely complex process. Some of them are handwritten from a guy in Tokyo, for example. We need the software to be able to manage that so that we can continue to automate it. I mean, they've helped us opening 4 entities this year, which is a banking infrastructure that you need to just simply transact. We're looking at Airwallex's merchant services because we have to build a bespoke process into a backend for taking payments from clients in multi-jurisdictional, you know, arena. We are now looking at FX with them. They have quite simple sort of forwards in place, but we're looking at how to develop that product for what we need. So they open the door for those discussions, which it's very rare for me. I've found that with other tech providers, let alone a banking partner.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm loving as everyone stuck to the brief. I'm loving where everyone's saying where they're from. I would also love it if you could write in the chat kind of like where you're looking to trade internationally with. So please do that. Tannah, I don't know if you're willing to, but I'd love to know some sort of examples or maybe some stories of, I don't know, where like you or your organization or organizations in the past have maybe made some mistakes when expanding internationally, or what are some common mistakes that you see kind of broader in the field?
Oh, I could talk a lot about this. Appreciate we don't have a huge amount of time, and if anyone wants to talk to me afterwards, I do like a chat. But for us, like no two country or no two state in the US, for example, is the same. It is all different. So for us, like the load of the real problematic areas like local tax, licensing, compliance, that kind of stuff for us is hugely complicated, and it's nuanced because we're not a we don't sell beds or wheels. We're not an airplane. We sell a tour, and it sort of then it falls in between a category. And sometimes when that happens from a tax perspective, it becomes pretty complex. A lot of people say like, oh, let's just test out the US. It's a big market. The reality is it's an expensive market to get into. Advisory is expensive there. Legal is expensive there. There's all sorts of tax complications and employment complications around 50 different states because you have to make it difficult. And it takes time to gain traction. So for us, we really focus on doing it well at home. We're in a local market. And then we looked at expanding internationally. But hindsight is a beautiful thing, right? So I wish I had known how difficult, for example, the US would have been before we jumped into it.
Absolutely, and it seems to be just changing all the time. I've got some lovely questions coming in, but I'm going to selfishly keep going with mine for the time being. And Claudia, your business sounds amazing, and I thought there was maybe a little collaboration opportunity. I don't know if you can see the chat, Tannah, but Claudia, I'd love to profile your business. Maybe you can get in touch with us afterwards. In terms of like some top tips for our audience, you're very welcome, Claudia. Do you feel like having a good knowledge of a local market helps you make kind of sound financial decisions?
It's helpful, but then there's also cultural nuances, like tipping in the US. That's an 18% cost to us on our gross margin for specific tiers within the US. So like it definitely helpful, but if you miss it, it becomes quite a costly mistake. So we try work really closely with local, providers, restaurants, tour guides, try and keep not only the product as local as possible, but really extending our advisory infrastructure locally to try and understand those nuances because they can become quite expensive mistakes to try and fix retrospectively.
And sorry, Tannah, to push a little further. Again, do you have any examples of any sort of cultural barriers or challenges that you've experienced or that maybe our audience might experience along the journey?
So probably one like real one is like advisory in the US. It's completely different to Europe. First of all, it's hellishly expensive. So it's really hard to sort of see what value you're getting from it. And I think our experience is that US advisors are like, this is how we do it. We'll tell you what we've done. This is the work we've executed on. And then you sort of get the outcome. And there's not a huge amount of consultation where in a European market, or at least to our experience, it's we're integrated into that process. So I think that sort of sits as a bit of an outlier. I mean, there's some more humorous ones where, for example, 90% of our transactions in Asia are in cash. So we have to deal with cash reconciliations just because Asian restaurants in, where we're trying to operate and try and keep it local and authentic just don't want to take cards. So it all sort of depends. But yeah, we deal with it a huge amount. And culturally, like language is an important one. It's just different. And I think you have to respect that. and also sort of be quite firm with what you want out of that relationship, be that a supplier, client, customer, guide, advisor, etc.
Nice, thank you. You've touched on this, but specifically around sort of currency fluctuations and issues around sort of complying with laws and regulations in different regions. This is a big question, but how do you manage it?
Yeah, so well, we have a policy of earn local, spend local. So we try and keep as much as possible our like a natural hedge and hold currency in a jurisdiction that we are operating in. That helps a lot from us. We have the ability because we can sell in those local currencies as well. And then we use tools like Airwallex basically to help us effectively manage a very complex banking infrastructure on a global basis. Then the other side of it, which is a much bigger work stream, is the compliance, taxes, labor laws, insurance. So those are massive work streams that I would say that we probably didn't focus on as much as we do now. We would run into a territory, set up tours. It's not expensive at all for us to start opening up tours in pretty much anywhere. But then there's the retrospective of trying to figure out what are the compliance and tax requirements that can become quite costly. And we sort of changing that rhetoric now, where just hired a compliance person and their sole job is to sort of do that desk work to figure out that if the business development team wants to go to a new market, that they've got a checklist to check, what problems we may foresee in that territory.
Thank you. I have a lot more questions, but I'm going to just lean into Michelle's because I think it's a fabulous question. And it might sound simplistic to some, but certainly I don't know the answer either. So Michelle's asking, Tannah, is it better to open a new company in a new location or set up in a new location from a UK-based company? What would you say to that?
Fantastic question, Michelle. Tax, I would say. So if you create an entity, and for us, we've got boots on the ground, so we have what they call permanent establishment risk. If you create the entity, you're sort of solidifying your position in that country from a tax perspective. So we are reluctant to set up new entities for the risk of there being either from a VAT, GST, sales tax perspective, or it's a direct or indirect tax, and then the sort of corporation tax that comes off the back of it. And those two are interlinked. So for us, it's a big tax question. And there is also cost, and trying to manage that entity, accountants, lawyers, etc. So as much as possible, we try and keep it from a UK infrastructure. It doesn't necessarily always happen that way. We have economic nexus in countries like the US and Canada, France, so we don't really have a choice. But we prefer not to expand a corporation infrastructure rather than sort of drive from the UK.
Perfect. I hope that answers your question.
I can talk for hours on that one, by the way. So if you want to hit me up after this, I'll be happily to do a call on it because we've looked into that extensively.
Oh, that's so kind. And actually, Michelle follows up with a second question, which is what is the best way to learn about the financial nuances in each new location? Hopefully this webinar is helping, but maybe you could reach directly out to Tannah. And I assume the support of Airwallex has helped along the way.
Yeah, I mean, they know their banking infrastructure really well. And it sounds silly, but literally just if you want to know very quickly, ask ChatGPT and be very direct with those questions. Really describe your product, really describe the problem you're trying to solve, trying to put into that answer as much as as much nuance as possible to what you're trying to achieve, and you will get a pretty good understanding on a very high level. And that can then start the workflow to say, right, now we're going to need legal advice on this and this and that. There might be some accountancy issues or tax advice. So it can kind of frame it. But if you want to just do some desk work, that's an easy way to get sort of an understanding really quickly.
Beautiful. We have dropped your LinkedIn profile into the chat, Tannah,
Fine.
because Kitty's also keen for a chat. I will also just do a little plug from our side as obviously please do reach out to Tannah. But we have developed what I think is a brilliant email course with the team at Airwallex, which is packed full of useful information in the topics and that we're discussing today. And you can win a £1,000 grant, and you can win a one-on-one mentoring session. So the link to that is in the chat. So please do go and check it out. From a sort of personal perspective, Tannah, what do you feel has been the most rewarding part of scaling Secret Food Tours internationally? And I'm going to hazard a guess. Is it I assume you've been on a lot of food tours, but
Yeah, I mean, look, there are perks to the job. 95 countries, so we're pretty much
wow.
guaranteed to have a food tour somewhere. I think for me, it's like the satisfaction of having worked, God knows how many hours and months on a project that you have this massive integration piece that's multiple systems, banking infrastructure. You've answered every legal question, every tax problem, and then you sort of churn out the first payment or pay the first invoice out of that process that you're developing. It's a hugely satisfying, pat on your own back or that of the team. So I take a lot of value out of seeing that process actually work. It probably breaks about 72 hours after that, but we'll fix it. But the reality is like, you put so much effort into trying to understand that nuance. You make the decision, you decide on the infrastructure, you develop and create the process, you build the tech around it. And then when it works, it is a really good feeling. So I think there's that sort of satisfaction in executing on that work because there's so many multiple work streams that come off the back end of it.
Tannah, you said that you talk a lot, but you've been giving very succinct answers. So thank you. I've been preparing myself to stop you.
Okay. Don't let me crack on then. Yeah.
No. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. So I guess the question is, we might, it sounds like everyone on the line is kind of really geared up to trading internationally or might be sort of still thinking about it. For those who are just really unsure and maybe hearing all of this and thinking, oh God, this sounds like a lot. Because it's not just the financial management, but it's the marketing and everything else in between. How do you know as an entrepreneur that you are ready to go global from a sort of more financial perspective, I guess?
Um, I'll probably contradict my advice and say just go for it.
Yes.
To be honest, the reality is like your product, your founder or work an executive level in your business. You know that product market fits. If you've got a bit of spare cash lying around, that's also helpful because it's not cheap, especially if you're trying to, answer all the questions around compliance, infrastructure, tax, legal, etc. So you don't really want to undercook it. Advisory internationally is going to not, it's going to be expensive, and everyone's got a standing from a standing start. They don't know your business. But if you think of it from a finance perspective, you've got to think of that multi-currency FX risk that your business is going to take. How do you automate like the operations, accounts payable, accounts receivable? Talk to Airwallex basically on that front. That's how we do it. And then you really have to focus on the legal, the tax, the compliance. But I wouldn't be too scared of it because we're still trying to get it right. I've been we as a business have been in the US for 5 years, and I'm still, improving our tax compliance and the infrastructure around licensing, being able to do business in multiple states. It's perpetual. You're not going to get it right the first time. You might get some bad advice on the way. So my advice is, I know you need to sort of satisfy those questions, but if you budget it up and there's some spare cash and you know your product well enough, jump into it and you can fix that other stuff on the way. Yeah.
Yeah, if anyone was to find themselves in I can't think of another word than a pickle. If you maybe it's food is on my mind. If anyone finds themselves in a pickle when sort of doing or sort of going through the sort of global growth, pain points, are there any sort of habits or principles that you rely on, Tannah, to stay sort of resilient through those episodes?
Yeah, I mean, we do test a lot. So we do a huge amount of testing. We're not going to jump in, open up a massive product and create a huge amount of risk for us. So we do test. That's definitely something that we adopt as a business. My like sort of catchphrase here would be like automate the boring and escalate the weird. Because if it doesn't look right, something's not right. And if you don't want to do that job, figure out a way to automate it. So that would be like a habit or principle. And then, yeah, I mean, like as I said, like your product, you've done the maths, you just need to get your head down and execute. This too shall pass. I mean, there's no problem that you haven't probably solved already. You just don't know that territory, and it's not that difficult to figure it out. The last probable point on that, and this is sort of something that regardless of what company or where we are, what we're doing, but just build a team around you because you cannot do it on your own. Simple as that.
That's really, really sound advice. Our founder often says, do what you do best and outsource the rest. And I imagine that is a good tip to take on board when it comes to international trade. I've got a question in from Adam here, who's a great question. How do you approach budgeting for international expansion when resources are tight?
Don't undercook it. I think like there sort of needs to be an agreement around the table, board or executives or the founders of the business to be like, this is an experiment in part. So you want to put enough, VUMA behind that to be able to make it happen. And you need to have something for unplanned contingencies. As I said, don't be scared jumping into it and sort of look to fix those problems as you go, but don't undercook it. You don't want to be in a place where, you're trying to scratch around for, 10, 100,000, whatever it is in your business and you can't get it, but it's just that little bit where it would make the slight difference or be never to open up a new market or release the testing in a product, whatever the case may be. So don't go short on it. But at the same token, again, your product, your business, your economics, you should be able to budget that pretty accurately within the new market.
Nice, thank you. Final call for any final questions. So please do get those in. You've shared such a wealth of advice, which has just been so brilliant. So thank you so much for your time, Tannah. If we could sort of condense it into one thing that you wish someone had told you before you started expanding internationally, what would it be and why?
I would say treat things like tax, FX, like payouts or payments as products rather than like a back office chore. Because if you think of it as a feature to what you do in your tech stack or in the product that you sell, you'll prioritize it more instead of it being like something that someone will sort out. And that way you won't be caught out with the cost of it, not only from like a compliance or an advice perspective, but if you were supposed to be charging sales tax and you haven't charged sales tax and now you owe sales tax, that's going to be a costly mistake for you as a business that you didn't factor into your economics. So if you treat them like a product or a feature, you're going to be able to prioritize them and it should mitigate the risk.
Amazing. Thanks, Tannah. I feel like you've done this before. Really. I do just want to say for everyone on the line, I mentioned it earlier, but please be sure to sign up for actually, we've got this has been a great webinar, but I know we've got more in this series. So please do check those out. And as I said, there is chance to win one of two £1,000 cash grants, which I know could make a really big difference for small businesses looking to trade internationally, and a one-on-one mentoring session with a global expert. All the links have been added into the chat. So please do check that out if you're kind of starting and growing. And would love to hear your feedback as well from this session. Just massive thanks for your taking part. Again, there's been a link in the chat to give us some feedback. The recording and some further resources will be shared with you later today in an email. Tannah, thank you so much for your time. Have you spontaneous question for you here, because I know you're already trading in so many places. Is there anywhere else on your hit list in terms of expanding the business into?
We're going to Africa next. So starting in Cape Town, South Africa, and then we're sort of figuring out a way to work northwards from there. And then top down Morocco, Egypt, going south. So yeah, we're looking at Africa next.
Amazing. I don't know about everyone else, but I'm starving.
I'm
Just the thought of food. So massive thanks, Tannah, for joining us. Massive thanks to Airwallex for backing this program, and massive thanks to all you small business owners as well. I think your LinkedIn inbox, Tannah, is going to be quite full.
No stress.
Have a great
Thank you so much.
afternoon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.